Hello, it is I, Reaper, winner of the Most Humblest Collection of Hot Wheels Award and hater of the SDKZ Puma in War Thunder. I have returned this month to talk about tanks. In fact, German tanks. Often in sensationalist history, it is easy to place one side as the underdog, and the other as the unstoppable force of God that is the be-all, end-all of juggernauts. This type of history and commentary happens often in ancient battles. Sparta against Persia, the Trojans against the Greeks, Disney, and making objectively good films.
My God, bro. Oh, hell.
Anyway, my point is, this type of sensationalist history has also infected the Second World War, with a large amount of weird and wacky myths about the Wehrmacht and how uber-powerful it was. This line of Band of Brothers is actually a lot more accurate than one might suggest.
Hey, you! That's right! You stupid crowd bastards! That's right! Say hello to Ford and General fucking Motors! You stupid fascist pigs! Look at you! You have horses! What were you thinking?
Okay, now, let's set the stage here. Around 5 years ago, if you said that your favorite tank was in fact not a German tank, you would get utterly dogpiled by literally every single Redditor with an opinion, furiously spewing into the comments section about, German tanks are easily the best, or whatever. But these days, historians and the truth have been coming more to the forefront. So, say it with me. German tanks are overrated. In fact, some of them are absolutely trash. Now, before I begin, it is important to introduce the concept of the Wehraboo. A Wehraboo is a person who has an unnatural attraction toward the German armed forces and the Wehrmacht during World War II. They cosplay as them, pretend to be them, probably do unspeakable adult things with their socks while thinking about them. But they are not historians. They worry not about the truths of what they are saying, merely about the sources that justify their internal biases and their cause. Another quick disclaimer. I am not a historian. I am a 17-year-old child who did only the bare minimum of research. So if I get the specifications of a specific German tank wrong, or you have a source that disproves what I am saying, please do drop them in the comments below. I will be happy to read them. I'm always up for learning something new. Now, at this point, it is prudent to note that not everything about German tanks is bad. Because there are some things about German tanks that are good. In fact, they excel in some respects. I would say that there are some pretty good German tanks. The Panzer IV and the Panzer III, I would argue, as the early war tanks, when they were designed, are pretty good. The Stug 3 assault gun, or tank destroyer, is also a very good one. An excellent low profile, a good gun, and the Jagdpanzer, I would also say is pretty good as a tank destroyer, though this is just my opinion. But now, before we get into any analysis, it is necessary to discuss hard and soft factors. Get your head out of the gutter. I know there's a joke here. Hard factors are what you would use when playing a game of top trumps. Armor, firepower, top speed, gun caliber, etc., etc., etc. Soft factors are harder to ascertain and are just slightly more subjective. Crew comfort, reload time, rate of fire, optics, turret traverse, and most importantly, reliability and logistics. I will get to this a little bit later. So, let's go back to some of the good bits, because there is stuff that we can talk about. Every single Panzerboo or Wehraboo's favorite tank is the Panzerkampfwagen 6, otherwise known as the infamous Tiger 1. And on the face of it, yeah, it is a pretty good tank. It has a ridiculously powerful for its time KWK-36 88mm main cannon, which has great penetration and can reliably penetrate every single allied tank on the battlefield at that point. It also has very good armor, 102 millimeters sloped at 10 degrees, so I would say roughly 110 millimeters of effective armor at the front. It also has arguably pretty good mobility for such a heavy tank, and the ground pressure isn't actually that bad either. The other tank that Veracruz also love is the Panzerkampfwagen 5, I believe, the Panther, and this shares the same advantages of the Tiger. Dummy thick frontal armor, and a great KWK-40 75mm main gun, giving these two a good advantage in range shooting from a kilometer or greater. Now, let's get to the reason of why you clicked on this video. The bad parts, because this is where the good parts basically end. Let's talk about the biggest problem with German tanks in general, their reliability. Because a tank is only as good enough as if it actually gets to the battlefield. And here is where German tanks, especially late war German tanks, like the Tiger II and Panther, really fall off. The Panther had atrocious reliability with a multitude of engine, transmission, and electrical issues. Let's address the engine first. The Maybach HL210 P30 V12 petrol engine, which delivered 650 metric horsepower at around 3,000 RPM, was by design an alright engine. However, due to it being watertight and having ventilation issues, the Panther was prone to overheating, and the engine had to be limited to 2,500 RPM, severely slashing the Panther's general mobility and making it actually quite slow when compared to some other Allied tanks. Oh, and did I mention that the Panther, because of its overheating issues, would lead the engine to spontaneously combust or burst into flame? People give the Sherman crap for bursting into flame, but at least it had to be hit first before cooking off. The Tiger and Tiger II suffered from similar problems, though it being designed as a heavy tank, and therefore being more of an assault or breakthrough vehicle, forgives it from some of these issues, because it wasn't designed for long-term operation. Just know that the Tiger's reliability wasn't great either. Then there's the transmission. Oh god, the transmission. Specifically, this piece. This is the piece that actually drives the drive sprocket and gives the tank power, also known as the final drive. This part was originally assigned to a much lighter tank, but because of all the armor that Daddy Hitler supposedly was trying to slap onto the Panther, it led to the tank being terribly overloaded, and the final drives would explode or otherwise stop working very, very early in the Panther's operation. The Tiger also, again, had this problem on a much lesser scale, but it had this problem nonetheless. Electrics in both the Panther and Tiger would also short out at the first sign of battle damage, and many German tanks would be disabled due to this. In fact, it was standard practice in the American doctrine for Shermans to fire high explosive rounds to knock out the fragile electrics that these German tanks were carrying. The suspension wasn't safe from problems either. The interlocking road wheel design, yes, gave both the Panther and Tiger great ground pressure, meaning that it was less likely to get stuck in mud or other soft surfaces. The problem is, these interlocking road wheels would get jammed up with mud in the eastern front and often be unable to move, thus rendering the tank useless. They were also extremely difficult to service, often requiring the entire system to be removed just to change a single road wheel, which would take hours, if not days, in the field. Contrast that with the Sherman's VVSS bogey system, which could be changed within at most a couple of hours, though it was possible to jerry-rig something within an hour and have the tank ready for action again, or at least to a point where you could drive it to a safe depot and have it fixed there. Now is also where I contradict myself. Earlier I said that the Tiger and Panther had great armor. I meant that they had great frontal armor. From the sides, the tanks were really not that well armored. In fact, early versions of the Panther's side armor were able to be penetrated by anti-tank rifles. Handheld anti-tank rifles. Even later with buffed side armor for the Panther, which came in the form of these plates, the side armor of the Panther wasn't that great either. Basically, any Allied tank can penetrate the sides of the Panther at any range. Again, People give the Sherman crap for not being able to penetrate anything, but the Sherman's perfectly adequate, I might add. Medium velocity 75mm M3 cannon can penetrate the Panther side from around 1.5 kilometers away. Now we can also talk about another issue, turret traverse, or how fast you can spin your turret onto target. Now for comparison, the M4 Sherman can turn its turret at roughly 23 degrees a second, or a full 360-degree turn in around 15 seconds. The Panther, that did between 6 to 19 degrees depending on which variant, which is much less than the Sherman, which means it does a full rotation in around 45 to 50 seconds. The Tiger, that was even less, and took a minute to do a full 360-degree rotation, which means by the time your gun is pointed in the right direction, the Sherman has fired 2 shots into your vulnerable flanks and turned your crew into a very nice painting made out of the entrails and the metal portions of the breech, or the turret that has just flown off because your ammunition is just cooked off. Finally, let's talk about the biggest problem, logistics and crew comfort. Contrary to public belief, it is logistics that wins wars, not the hard factors. A tank is only so good that you can mass produce them. And Nazi Germany never could make enough Panthers or Tigers. This is an argument I see all the time on forums, Facebook, and X. I'm looking at you. Because there's a bunch of people who decide to say, oh, if they just built more Panthers and Tigers, Germany could have won. Shut up, you're stupid, and no. Germany could not have won, because they simply didn't have enough resources to build them. Panthers and Tigers required many types of rare metals, like tungsten and nickel, stuff that Germany was deathly short on in 1944 and 1945. So they had to be circumvented with cheap solutions that would inevitably fail and cut into the effectiveness of the tank. It essentially was an expensive tank that was built cheaply. Did I mention that the Tiger and Panther also took nearly a week to build from scratch and another week to be shipped to the front lines? A Sherman could be built from scratch and shipped to the front lines across the entire Atlantic Ocean, I might add, in a single week. Which means by the time the precious Tigers and Panthers arrive, a few hundred Shermans just have arrived, waiting to turn your tanks into the latest war memorial and grave of the crews. At the end of the day, Panthers and Tigers were simply not sustainable for the Third Reich to make, and even if they did, the Allies would always outmanufacture them. And the Allies already had ways of taking out Tigers and Panthers. Logistics win wars, not just the tanks. And here, the Sherman excelled. By the end of the war, 50,000 American Shermans would be made and distributed, some serving well into the 1970s. Weight is another big issue, with both the Tiger and Panther unable to cross many bridges. Now, this might not seem like a big issue, but a big part of being a tank is being able to support your infantry as it moves forward. As if an infantry comes into battle with another infantry, and this other infantry has tank support, the infantry without tanks is going to be fried faster than deep-fried French fries. Now, Allied tanks that I know of, except maybe the M26 Pershing, never had this problem that I know of. I already addressed this point a little bit earlier, and that is maintenance. How quickly or how easily you can fix your tank if something goes wrong, or how easy it is to repair a knocked out tank. Here again, the German big cats have problems. The Panther and Tiger suspension, as I said before, was a nightmare to work on, and so were the engines, requiring massively long service periods, meaning that at any moment a lot of German panzer divisions were not in fact at full strength. A note here on loss statistics. Nazi Germany calculated tank losses differently than the Allies. From my sources, the Allies would do what's called a last count at sundown, where they would count the remaining tanks that were in working order, meaning that a knocked out or lost tank could be something as simple as it losing a track, or the engine being broken, and obviously these were things that could be in fact repaired. The Germans, however, were a lot more liberal. in these standards, meaning a tank with a knocked out turret, holed engine, and broken tracks, but still technically worked, could still be listed as with the unit, meaning that in a unit of, say, 24 tanks, only 10 to 12 of them could actually be fightable. Often, we compare tanks in a vacuum. 1v1, you versus the other guy in an open field. But this is a skewed comparison, because tanks never fight one-on-one. A tank is merely a tool in a much larger system of combined arms warfare, meaning that a tank, in my mind, should excel at a variety of roles. If your tank is only suited to blowing up other tanks and can't really do anything else, I would argue that you don't have a winner. You have a one-trick pony. Because you'll only be able to bring your tank out for very, very limited opportunities. Whereas your opponent, with a jack-of-all-trades, can bring out their tank anytime they want. So now it's time to quickly wrap up. If the Germans didn't have the best tanks, then who did? Well, this is a surprisingly hard question to answer because we don't have a definition of best. If you mean best armored, then the British Matilda and then the Churchill are pretty high on the list, as well as other tanks like the IS-2, IS-1, KV-1, and KV-85. In terms of speed, you have tanks like the Crusader, Cromwell, and BT series of tanks, as well as light tanks like the M3 Stuart and the M24 Chaffee. But I would measure best in terms of all-rounder, in terms of a combination of both hard and soft factors. And here, I would highlight two tanks. One being the Soviet T-34 medium tank. This tank was as crude as it was effective. It was the perfect machine for the Russians. Simple, effective, and enough to get the job done. The other, which I personally feel should get more praise, is the tank that really helped win the war for the Allies, that I've sort of been comparing the German tanks to in this video, is the American-made M4 Sherman. It was the perfectly good enough tank that was exported to nearly every single Allied nation. It was endlessly reliable. It was cheap. It was easy to maintain and easy to fix. It had just enough armor to get the job done. Its mobility was just enough to get the job done. And its cannon excelled at what tanks were supposed to do, which is support the infantry. It lobbed an excellent high explosive round, and in most tank-to-tank engagements up until 1944, its 75mm medium velocity cannon was more than accurate for destroying other tanks. But what sets this tank apart is it's endlessly modifiable. You want an artillery tank? Sure, M4A3 with a 105mm howitzer artillery gun. Need a minesweeper? Have a Sherman Crab minesweeper. You need a Sherman that can annihilate a Tiger's frontal armor from nearly 2 kilometers? Have a Sherman VC Firefly. Need, for some reason, a tank with rockets strapped to the top for destroying fortifications? The T-34 Calliope can get the job done. Need a tank with really good armor that can bounce a Tiger's 88mm main cannon? Have the M4A3E2 Jumbo Sherman. Need a tank that does everything while maintaining the ease of maintenance of a Sherman platform? Wham! Have the M4A3E8 Easy 8 Sherman. Whatever you need a tank for, there's probably a Sherman for that. And this is not even me mentioning the multitude of engineering vehicles, bridge layers, and other support vehicles that use the Sherman's chassis and hull. I will probably be doing a video on the Sherman itself, so please do stay tuned. So, how to end? German tanks were not the best. In fact, they weren't even close to being the best. The only reason that's the given is because of sensationalist history trying to push a narrative. And that's it, really. Anyway, if you've made it here and still wish to call me a moron, feel free to put it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please do let me know as well via carrier pigeon or hit the like and subscribe button, whichever suits you the most. Anyway, take care, have fun, and remember, a tank always keeps moving forward. This is Reaper, signing off. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!
Over there.